pick and roll with it. Make a pick and roll with it. Betting weekly. Fast break. From coast to coast and way downtown. From coast to coast and way downtown. From coast to coast and way
Welcome to this live edition of Betting Weekly Fast Break on this lovely Wednesday as we finally sit only one day away from the start of the NBA Finals. We also have a rare break from WNBA play today before play resumes tomorrow with 2 games, including this absolute juggernaut of a team and the still undefeated Liberty. We'll get into all of this and more in this live edition of Betting Weekly Fast Break. By the way, you should sign up for the newsletter at bettingweeklystudios.com for weekly betting tips and the entire newsletter. I'm Sara Civian, and if you're wondering who the heck I am, I'm so happy to join Betting Weekly from BetRivers, Toronto Sports Trust, and Bleacher Report. I'm from Boston. Yes, I would give Jason Tatum my Achilles if he were to ask me, and I'm currently on location in the beautiful Edmonton, Alberta, to get some playoff hockey in before the Thunder and the Pacers face off for Game 1 tomorrow. Of course, I'm here with somebody we all already know and love on Betting Weekly, Doug Kerizian. Doug, how are you feeling now that we're a little more than 24 hours out from Game 1 of the Finals?
Yeah, good to be with you. It's like, the old radio adage, long time, first time. It's the first time we've worked together, but obviously long time fan and, on the social sphere as well. Look, you see these things dissect. It's almost like Super Bowl, the 2-week break, right? There's only so many X factor conversations you can have, and there's only so many ways to dissect things. But it does give you sort of a reminder, much like the Super Bowl break, is that these coaches are going to think outside the box. They're going to diagram stuff. We obviously have 2 regular season meetings to use as some sort of a reference point, but Chet Holmgren missed both. And that Rick Carlisle is an elite coach, a really, really elite coach. So he knows what he's up against with the Pacers. So I imagine they're going to do some stuff a little differently. And I think a lot of coaches keep things close to the vest in the regular season, save it for the postseason. Pop always did that with load management in high profile meetings, like when the Spurs faced the Heat in the regular season. He sat his guys. He didn't want to tip his cards in case in case they met in the finals down the road. Albert Nguyen was on earlier in the week. He thinks that Indiana's going to just force the ball out of SGA's hands, maybe double teams across the board and just make the other guys beat them. I think that's an approach we'll see at some point in the series. I have a feeling Pacers might play things straight up, at least to start, because they believe in themselves and things like that. So I'm fired up. I understand the break. I'm okay with the break, but I couldn't do 2 weeks like the Super Bowl. I'm okay with a few days, which, like you said, we're only a day away now.
Yeah, we talk about load management, and I think we're finally going to see some good defense. What do you think about that?
Well, the Thunder have the best defense in the NBA, and they've showed it at times. Now, they've gotten into some track meets because their defense with live ball turnovers wants to create sort of easy buckets in transition. And we saw that really vividly in Game 7. That was the name of the game. They just got out and ran. Now, the Pacers want to score before that defense sets up, the half-court defense, that is. So that's why the totals trickled up a little bit. Chris Massaro, professional bettor, was on earlier in the week, and he thinks it's going to sort of be like a free-flowing, at least start to the finals before we get some adjustments and tendencies and lockdown and things like that. So the over-under has gone up. Yesterday was 231.5, came back down to 231, as we can see now on the screen. It's going to be really the shot making is what it comes down to. And the Pacers' only chance, I think, is if they just outshoot them like lights out in 4 out of 7 games. They don't have to do it in all the games, just 4 out of 7, or maybe 3 and steal one, lower scoring game, maybe when they start kind of traveling and later in the series. But I think we're going to see some pace. I know the Thunder defense is there, but the Pacers know what they're doing. They find the hot hand, they find the open hand. And I do think we're going to see some points. I'd be a little gun shy on the under. I do think we're going to move. The ball's going to pop a lot, and the Pacers want to attack as well.
These Game 1s have been pretty unpredictable too, and it kind of gets to the containment game in games like 2 and 3, right?
It's a good point. I think we've seen over the years that game one, like when the Warriors were those monster favorites over the Cavs with Durant and all those guys, and that meme with LeBron yelling at J.R. Smith, like, give me the ball when J.R. Smith didn't know the exact score that they were tied. They lost in overtime. But game one, sort of when you can sneak up and steal, and almost the favorites read days of press clippings, how, oh, the NBA Finals is just a formality, blah, blah, blah. Maybe. And this Thunder team has shown some vulnerability at times of playing with their food a little too much, but they've also been just lights out at home. That's the concern I have if you're taking the Pacers. But I can see this being a gentleman's sweep, a 5-game series, but the Pacers maybe covering 3 or 4 of the games. I really can see that. This 9.5 spread feels rich and feels high when I think the Pacers are a very sort of slept on team. I think look, they have the second best record since January 1. We've heard that stat. They're really good at full strength. They're excellent coach. I think 9.5 is just too high. I know what the Thunder just did to the T-Wolves at home in those 3 games, but I think the Pacers in my eyes are going to be the best team the Thunder played all postseason.
Okay, I love that you brought that up because I think the spread is really where the most value can lie. There's like a plus 1.5 for the Pacers that I do want to get into eventually, and we will go through all of that, folks. But first, we do have to address that the Thunder are absolutely heavily favored, and we're talking heavily favored. One of the most lopsided NBA Finals favorites since you were talking about that one team with KD. It's kind of shades of that. Like right now, our Bet Rivers app has them at minus 715, and the Pacers at plus 500 for NBA champion. I mean, sheesh. They aren't even the defending title champions, RIP Celtics. Doug, what do you make of these odds? Should people do anything with this information?
So, I've said it a couple times this week. Like at first glance, I'm like, what? Can't be that high. When there were 3 teams remaining. So when the Thunder punched their ticket to the finals and we were waiting sort of game 6 with the Knicks and Pacers, and I saw the minus 770 futures, and I was like, that's too much. And then I saw the price, but I'm also not running to the counter to bet Indiana. I do think the Thunder have sort of figured it out. I actually think the market hasn't quite adjusted. So it reminds me of the Warriors' first year, right? When they didn't have KD yet, they had Steph, and they were facing the Cavs, who obviously had lost Kevin Love in the playoffs and then lose Kyrie, I believe, after game 1. And I just think the series price would be a lot higher if the Thunder were like the defending champ, like you mentioned. And they're not, but they've also been historically great from a regular season. So power rating in terms of efficiency numbers and what they've done. If they win this, they'll have 80 wins and things like that. They're just a juggernaut. And next year, this time, if they're in the finals, this will be like 950 or whoever, if they're facing a 4 seed or whatever. Pacers have the longest odds, I believe, of any team in the finals going into the season that we've ever had. So they were like a 50-1 shot or something at the beginning of the season, and we've never seen that in the finals. And preseason, there it is, 50-1. So I love Carlisle, and I think the teams are better. And I think now in this current NBA, we're going to see more long shots like this go deep in the playoffs, if not reach the finals. So it's a new landscape, and the old predictable NBA is no longer the case. With that being said, I think this Thunder team's a juggernaut. So I'm not jumping on plus 500. I think there's some other ways you can do it. Like I think they're going to cover more games, as I alluded to. But I'm actually getting to a point soon where I might look at SGA for MVP. I think a few too many people are talking themselves into some of the other guys where I think the market, because remember, these odds makers are risk managers. So they don't lose sleep over minus a 560 favorite or whatever that SGA is. I don't think anyone on the Thunder has a shot. Jalen Williams is not going to get finals MVP. I think the timing is perfect if you like the favorite, because last year Jaylen Brown got finals MVP and conference finals MVP. We just saw Pascal Siakam win the voting for conference finals MVP 5-4. So there's people who want big tickets and long shots that are talking themselves into Jalen Williams. I don't think there's any chance that anybody but SGA wins. And we talk about this with the Super Bowl and the quarterback and the Super Bowl MVP. So if minus 560 gets to minus 500, I think I'm going to have to grab a piece of that. I know you're not going to get rich laying $5, but at some point, value is value. And I think it's essentially saying I'm getting minus 500 on the Thunder because I don't think anyone's going to win it. So I would grab the minus 500. So I'm still thinking about minus 560, but I'm hoping the market over the next 24 hours continues to head that way.
Sorry,
Like
guys.
he's really,
Sorry, I'm
yeah,
in a
no, he's
hotel
just
room. My
really
business.
yeah, he's really that impressive is my point. And he controls the entire offense. Like he's the head of the snake. So SGA is just one of those guys where he's going to get deference because he already won league MVP, right? He's going to get that deference, but he scores so much and can distribute. He runs the offense. He's silky smooth. He's a good defender. So I think his just stat line is going to be so impressive that we're going to have sort of betting value on a huge favorite. If you don't want to lay the 715, I would certainly look at SGA. But I know you're interested in maybe the Pacers having a little bit of a pulse and a shot, not just covering some games, but winning some games.
I think they got two in them, right? I don't think anything comes simple to a favorite in these NBA playoffs, and especially the finals with this matchup, right? It's kind of like the Pacers understand the Thunder's game a little bit, and I feel like they have a chance for at least two games. Are you going to talk me in or out of this?
So well, first of all, they do because the Pacers have shut everyone up who's
Yeah.
doubted them all postseason, and they've been fairly dominant, all things considered. Yeah, the game one in New York at the Madison Square Garden down 17. Okay, that was a fluky win, but the other wins, not really. I mean, they dominated Cleveland in game one on the road, and this team just has that edge. I think they can beat you in different ways. That's what I love most about this Pacers team. They can outscore you with all their shooting, and Miles Turner can bomb and everything. But then they also have a toughness to them that you don't think about when you have offensive minded teams. But Neesmith, Matherin, even McConnell, those guys play with an edge, especially on defense, Nebhart. So they can sort of muck it up and sort of change the tempo and adapt to any sort of way the game is playing. And let's face it, the Thunder, obviously SGA is incredible, but those guys are sort of unproven. And I know it's a different team than last year that we saw lose to the T Wolves, but we saw Jalen Williams wet the bed a little bit. We've seen these guys sort of crumble under the pressure. And we saw Mark Daniel in the first game one against Denver. He crumbled a little bit. So I think he's a good coach, worthy for coach of the year from a couple years ago. But I think Carlisle's the better coach. He's more experienced and has proven it with a ring 2011 and such an impressive win with the Mavs over the Miami Heat. But I I do think it's a little we can't just assume the Thunder are going to get it done just because they handled their business against the T Wolves. Like I said earlier, I think the Pacers are in fact the best team they faced. I think the market's been wrong on them. I think the futures market was wrong. 25-1 to win the East was wrong. I think this is a worthy NBA Finals opponent, but I do think the Thunder defense will make the Pacers offense work for their buckets much more than they did against the Knicks, who have bad defense. Cavs D did not play well. And in the first round, the Indiana got a gift by facing that Milwaukee defense. That's terrible. So I just think that the perimeter defense, Halliburton's going to have to be guarded by Lou Dort. I think that they could be a problem. But the Pacers showed they had a lead late in one of the regular season meetings. They're coming to win a game here, and the first two games in OKC, and I certainly think they belong here in the finals. This is not a formality by any means. I just don't know when push comes to shove that they're going to be able to actually win multiple games. I just think they're going to cover with the point spread.
Yes, yes. I
So
like the
I
idea of
can't really
that
talk
because that
you out.
kind of takes
I'm
some of
sort of
the.
talking you out of it, right?
I am on the fence, and I will decide later what my
Okay.
final verdict will be. So let me mull that over. But you did mention the defense aspects of this in the perimeter, and Halliburton's a huge X factor or not X factor in this situation. So I feel like you'd lean towards an under when it comes to his points. What do you have there?
I have that in the newsletter, and I got ahead of the market, I guess. So I'm under 17.5. Now the market has since adjusted, but in the newsletter it's minus 120. It's now minus 134. I'm going off. So one regular season meeting, he was held to like 2 points. He was completely shut down, and the other one he was bombing threes. I do think the way the Thunder structure their defense with the passing and switching and things like that, passing off the player that is, so they switch on defense and whether it's SGA, Jalen Williams, or even some of the bench players like Caruso, these guys are elite defenders. And I don't know if Halliburton's going to be able to dance and get around them. And I also think the way Halliburton is wired is to get his teammates involved. So I think the bigs of Indiana, like Miles Turner and other guys, are going to lurk around the 3-point line. And Halliburton's a willing passer. He knows he's not going to be able to beat the Thunder by himself. I think it's going to be by committee. So I think they're going to get the ball out of his hands. And frankly, we've seen him go off, right? We've seen him have some huge stat lines, but 17 and a half is kind of a big number for a point guard who's been getting double-digit assists in a lot of games. And he does sub out in the second and third quarter, beginning of the fourth. Like, doesn't play 48 minutes. And this Thunder team will make you work. A lot depends on how it's officiated. But Lou Dort, sidebar, my favorite nickname in the NBA, Dorcher Chamber. Awesome. And he's just fantastic. And even when they do the high screen and rolls and things like that, like the next defender, I don't think Halliburton, I really think the defense Indiana has faced in the first 3 rounds has been terrible. Knicks defense is really bad. Now, does that mean they're not going to score 100 point, whatever? Of course they're going to score. They're good offense. They're a really good offense, very efficient. But I think Halliburton's going to have some tough time, and you can't be afraid to lose a bet. And if he gets 18 or more, so be it. But I think the goal of this team is not to stop Siakam. It's to stop Halliburton, or at least limit him, the damage he can do, because he can do so much.
And
But I
it's
see
like
you
if you're
like him a
playing
little bit
Carl
over his
Anthony
points.
Towns on defense. Yeah. I feel like when you go from Carl Anthony Towns to this OKC team defense, you are kind of right to take this under. At the same time, I kind of like the idea of if he's going to score over 17.5, it's going to be game one. I feel like maybe he has healed a little bit with the hand injury, but I also think I'm fooling myself. And I feel like every time I bet on him, he ends up doing the thing that I don't bet on him for. So I think I'm going to go with you on the under on this one.
I had over his assists in game 5, and that was like his worst game of the series. So who am I to, pretend to be the Halliburton whisperer? I completely botched that game 5. But I do think that's a good point. I think there's a shock factor for sure. That's more of an opening in game 1 than it is any other series. So I do think Indiana's chances are there. And I do think the Thunder, I don't want to say immature, but they're not sort of experienced and mature enough to block out the noise and just come in and take care of business. They might be, but in game 1 against Minnesota, yeah, they won by double digits, but they were trailing, I believe, at half. I got to remember that, or it was a close game at least. But I do think the Pacers are going to come in sort of the, kitchen sink game and sort of nothing to lose. Um, I'm torn. I just think the defense is going to be too much on the perimeter for Halliburton, and he's not going to be able to just kind of just name his path to the hoop. I do think he's going to have to earn it and hit some shots. And if he does, so be it. I'm not afraid to lose that wager, but I don't want to talk you off anything. I don't have a crystal ball here.
So if he's being contained, can you talk me into a different player prop for his team?
Yeah, I do think the key to sort of the Pacers is they're just going to have to hit shots. And you always want to look at usage and 3-pointers, or usage and attempts. So when I look at the 3-pointers, it's like, where's the usage going to be? Now, Neesmith over under for 3-pointers made is -165, but he's a guy who could, obviously he's a long shot, but like lead the series in 3-pointers made. I think he's going to get his looks. So that's a guy who I think is very important for Indiana if they want to hang around. I think he's going to have to be shooting his threes. Now he's very athletic and strong and can drive to the rack. So that's a guy I think is going to shoot a lot of threes in my eyes. I think Miles Turner is going to have to make some and stretch the defense. Now I'm assuming Holmgren's going to be guarding him that far out, and maybe they put Hartenstein on someone else on the block. I haven't watched the regular season meetings yet. Lou Dort, I think, is going to go over his. He's not afraid to shoot. Let's say, like, there could be a guy more open and 10 seconds on the shot clock, so plenty of time, and he still shoots it. Now he's -195 to the over, so maybe I would go an alt line over 2.5, something like that. For three plus at +143. So those are the sort of props there. I don't have a read on a guy who's going to just straight get points. both these teams, if you think about how deep they are, they kind of score by committee. Like some games, Siakam can go for 30, some days he'll go for 13, and both can be wins. And the same goes for the Thunder. Jalen Williams is a little unpredictable because Holmgren will shoot, and he's been playing great offensively, driving to the hoop in the last couple games against the T Wolves. So I'm afraid to go under because the shot volume. So I'm gonna have to watch sort of how it goes. But I would say Neesmith's the guy that I've been circling, and Dort. I could see Dort getting 3+ made threes. It a lot depends on the pace, and I do agree with one of our guests early in the week, Chris Massaro, who said he thinks this is gonna be like a looser game back and forth. We'll see. We'll see. But I do think that could happen. So I like Neesmith over 1.5 made threes. It is a little juicy at -165, but I think the shot attempts will be there.
Okay, I love that, and I love that you mentioned Dort. I just feel like this series is where he can cook. I feel like this is his type of ball, you know what I mean?
Yeah, if they let him play his physicality, it all comes down to we talk about some of those teams in the NCAA tournament that are so physical, whether it's West Virginia's Press Virginia, right? Or Houston, the physicality they did, and they got into, to the championship game and a whisker of winning it all. If the refs let them play with their physicality, it's going to be Dort's going to stay out there and he gets away with whatever he wants. He's a specimen, Canadian native, by the way. He's an absolute specimen. I think he's Montreal even. Look at me. He's awesome. He's an absolute elite perimeter defender. And if he's allowed to use his strength and some of his hands, because his feet move quickly and he's just going to play a bunch. And then on offense, he draws rain on his shots. His arc is just incredibly high, and he's been making them. So I would maybe not -195, but the 3+ at +143 is interesting as well.
Love to hear it. Overarching for game one, this is your only show before game one. So, what are your thoughts in general? What do you like?
Yeah, I'll be back tomorrow, but I'll be in the host chair. So I lean to the dog plus the 9.5. I lean to the over. I'm not ready to pull the trigger on that. I do think we're going to see some unders at some point in this series. I do think the attention to detail with both teams, especially both defenses, I think Indiana will be committed to the defense. I just think they're going to be in for a little bit of a shock, not being able to score that much, but maybe a Pacers team total be good on the under. I need to see a little bit more. And maybe I should go watch some of the regular season. I had that earmarked for today, the regular season meetings. I was going to go watch the archives, but so much is going to be different anyway. And especially the early meeting, Holmgren didn't play in either of them. So there's not a whole lot of stock, but I'm on Halliburton under for now. I do like those 3-point props as well. The rebounds are interesting. And we talked about the series props and why Holmgren's the favorite for the lead. He's an odds-on favorite at -121. I don't really get that. I know he's 7'1", but he's also 208 pounds, and that's listed. He's probably $198. And he hangs around the perimeter on offense because that's where he stretches the defense and shoots. I don't want any part of that. I think there's value on other players, and I starts with Hartenstein plus 450. So that's definitely a wager I am making. Hartenstein plus 450 to lead the NBA Finals in rebounds. Holmgren's 8.5 for his over/under prop in rebounds. Over is juice -143, as we see on the screen. But I disagree. Last series, and I was early to sniff this out, he went under in all 5 games. The market was 8.5 at the beginning of the series, got to 7.5, and 7.5 under was plus money, and he cashed those two. So now he landed 7 in the last game, but he's not a guy who's going to be lurking around the paint. Frankly, at the end of one of those games, I think it was game 4, where the T-Wolves were fouling and all that stuff, and they basically had to miss a free throw at the end, and his coach didn't even put him in the game to be on the block. And he's 7'1". Instead, he got Jalen Williams, the Arkansas one, off the bench, had him play in the block because obviously he's a bulkier frame, and then he had Hartenstein as well. So Holmgren's not a guy that is going to get all those rebounds and gobble them up. And with a number like 8.5 and under plus money, let's fire away. I'm going to add that to the portfolio, if you will. So I like that under +07. And again, can't be afraid if he gets long rebounds or he gets other rebounds. He plays hard and plays tough. So he's not afraid to mix it up. He's only 200 pounds or whatever. So, and there's other guys who are going to get rebounds, right? Hardenstein, you got all the bigs for Indiana. Will there be that many rebounds if the pace is high? Sure. And all the 3-pointers, but I'll take my chances, especially plus money. I would have made this number like literally 6.5 with the over juiced. And so I don't agree with the 8.5. I just, like he can also get in foul trouble. I mean, there could be a blowout and he doesn't play in the fourth quarter. There's a lot of ways to win this there's just more ways to win on the under than the over in my eyes.
Yeah, I love the idea of focusing on the boards when it comes to a series like this, especially with so many uncertainties around the finals and just things like that that can happen.
And look, when you have a lopsided series price like we do, um, and some people don't like getting involved at a point spread of 9.5. I've talked to odds makers when we talk about, ooh, what's going to be the most bet game of the day, when there's like a NFL playoffs or something like that. Typically, the public doesn't love getting involved in high point spreads. Usually it's 2.5. That's when you're going to see a lot of two-way action, especially on the money line. So props are already growing by the day in terms of the interest by the betting public. And so I can see that this really being sort of like a dominating sort of component to betting in these finals. I just think there's other ways to bet this series than the point spread and the total. But I do think when you have a large point spread, a large side like 9.5, you're going to get more even more interest on the prop market.
Okay, and I just have to ask for the money line people. Is there any point in this series you would kind of pick the Pacers?
I'd have to see it. But also you see it, and then the biggest kiss of death in any sports better is to think what you last saw is really predictive. And I'm, a little apprehensive because I think Carlisle, if he does steal game one or game two, I think he's going to make adjustments along the way as well because he knows the Thunder are going to make adjustments as well. Look, don't get me wrong. Game one money line plus 330, it's enticing. Who doesn't like, a plus 330 ticket if you think you can get there? I wouldn't lay the 420. Let me put it this way. I would not lay the minus 420. And I don't like the 715 in the series. I like the minus 560 on SGA much more, but I haven't even pulled the trigger on that. I'm hoping it keeps trickling down, so to speak, and we can get $5 because then I'll get involved. I'll get involved at minus 500 because that's what I think is essentially. I really think I won't even say 1%. I think there's 0% chance the Thunder. Well, I guess there's 1%. Let's say SGA suffers a serious injury and the Thunder just play without him and are able to, eke out a 7-game series win or something like that in Jalen Williams or whatever. But I think SGA minus 500, if it can get to that, would be a good wager. But the money line on the series price, money line on game one, I can see it. I really could. The game one stealing it, but I can answer more of that question. Game two's money line after I see game one. But I think, like I said, I think the Pacers are here and they're going to be legit.
Yep. I am scarred from the Celtics, so now I'm like everybody in game one. The underdog is going to win. I need this for my soul and my ego.
Yeah, I guess the question is also, given what we've seen the first two rounds, including the Celtics series, like if we see one team up 20 points, should we be betting the underdog? And after it happened a couple times, we would laugh, and then it kept happening.
Yep.
And then we laughed again. Oh, now's the time to bet the underdog down 20. And then it happened again.
Some of us were laughing.
It's been ridiculous. Yes. Yeah. Maybe, okay. So yeah, exactly. I'm talking about another series. Not the Celtics. Of course. We don't have to pick at the scab of the Celtics. But yeah, I mean, it's crazy what's gone down. But the 3-pointer's the great equalizer. We've seen things evolve. So I'm just maybe it's just wishful thinking. Like I want to see a competitive finals, but I do think this goes 5 games only. I'm hoping the Thunder win games 1 and 2. I really am, because then I will come in heavy on the Pacers 3 in game 3. I don't think this is a sweep at all. I really don't. And I think the power ratings are going to give you an opportunity to fade the Thunder like we saw in the Western Conference Finals with the T-Wolves in game 3. Alt lines, you name it. I'm going to be all in as long as this series unfolds kind of like how I think it will. So I'm hoping the Pacers aren't that competitive. I'm hoping, they lose by like 7 to 13, 15 points in each of the first 2 games. And that's when we hammer the Pacers. But I do think the Pacers are going to cover more games than they don't in this series.
I'm with you on that. And I think I like the idea of kind of a game 3 vibe ship for sure.
Yeah, I mean, look, we want to bet every game. I get it, all that, but there's fewer games now, right? You got to pick your spots. And if this were the regular season, we'd have 13 games or so, or 9 games or so on a random Wednesday. We'd only be betting like 1 or 2. So when there's only one game, you got to be disciplined and not just force things. And that's what I keep reminding myself. But to your point from earlier, like we do have props. And that's something we can look into for sure in that regard.
And I take it, Doug, that your number one pick of the series is SGA for MVP.
So, yeah, I mean, I wouldn't bet it though yet. If it gets to minus 500, I would bet it. But my favorite bet of the series for the series, I would say I do like the spread, the minus whatever games. I would say Hartenstein top rebounder at plus 450 is pretty ridiculous. Like if these odds came out and he was the favorite, I'd been like, okay, that makes sense. So I don't know why Holmgren is the favorite. It doesn't really make any sense. I don't think it's a matchup thing where only Holmgren can play center and Hardenstein will be off the court. Like it's a really puzzling thing. In terms of props for game one, Hartenstein's only 6.5. Now it's over minus 148. So you're looking at like, let's be technical here, like 6.7, 6.8, right? Holmgren's like 8 point. I don't think Holmgren's 2 rebounds better than Hartenstein. I just don't. Maybe I'll feel like an idiot after watching the first half or something, but I don't get it. So I think my favorite play for a series bet as of now is Hartenstein leading rebounder plus 450. The juice is just too enticing, and I think it's a smart value play for sure.
100%. All right. Any closing thoughts on game one or the series before people lock their bets in before tomorrow?
Yeah, I mean, I like those 2 game 1 props we mentioned. Holmgren under 8.5 rebounds plus +07, I believe it was. And then I still like Halliburton under 17.5, but the juice is getting up there at minus 134. I liked it much earlier in the week when we talked about the newsletter minus 120. I mean, Halliburton's obviously an elite player, all NBA type of player, all-star, all that good stuff. He can get his, but I think they're better served if he's passing. And especially if Dort's guarding him, I think it's going to be really tough to score that many points unless he's just doing the step back deep threes and making them. There's really no defense for that, given the shot release above his head and all that. It's just really tough to defend when you're also defending the drives and the high pick screen and rolls and things like that.
100%. Do we got any plays from the viewers?
Yeah, no, not. We've had some guys. Daryl obviously he's saying it's like boys on of the French Open because no one will see them coming. You just wait and see. All right, Daryl Turner says that. That's fair. I like that. And that look, they belong. I don't. That's the other thing. I do think the Thunder take care of business, and I do think it only goes 5 games, but I don't think it's just going to be a formality. And I don't want to dismiss the Pacers if they steal a game in OKC. I'll be surprised. I won't be shocked. Let's put it that way. They belong here. They were the best team in the East in these playoffs. Like I don't care if the Celtics got hurt. I think the Pacers could have beaten them. They beat them last year in the NBA Cup thing. So they belong when they're at full strength and they have, like I said, an elite coach. I just think the Thunder just can have so much versatility both offensively and defensively, and that's what makes it really tough. But I'm excited to watch this matchup. I think anybody who likes basketball, I don't care if it's small market, will enjoy this matchup.
I think there's going to be some tough, close games, and I just see the Thunder closing them out more easy.
That's how I'm seeing it. But okay, so Ryan chiming in. I think Jalen Williams is worth a look to lead rebounding. I agree. Extreme long shot, but Turner had quite a few during the season matchup. Yeah, I mean, I totally agree. I think it's an open market. I'm surprised that it's a odds-on favorite in this situation, being minus money for Holmgren. I think the rebounds is really interesting. So Jalen Williams plus 700, certainly interesting. SGA can fill up the stat sheet 10-1. I don't think Halliburton gets there. I think maybe one game he could lead in rebounding, but overall, the just total combined, I don't know. But yeah, I think Siakam, Jalen Williams, and Hartenstein are all live. Frankly, I don't think Holmgren should be the favorite. I guess he should, and maybe his player prop will prove me wrong, but I'm under on that guy. As we look at some of these, we see the nice payouts. I don't think Turner's going to get there. I don't think Neesmith will get there at 30-1, or 30-1. So I understand the apprehension on that, but we talked about it yesterday and the day before. Even Hartenstein, Siakam, Jalen Williams, all enticing. And look, it's kind of fun to have a 5-1 ticket, right? And it's a series bet. So a guy who's leading things, even if Holmgren is the leading rebounder after game one, it's not going to be like 15 and everyone has 4. You're live after 2 games even. We saw Ant win this market in the Western Conference Finals at 40-1. So I am not. I'm looking to kind of win a long shot ticket or a semi long shot ticket because we've seen all throughout the playoffs these types of index bets do well. So 40 to 1 with Ant. We had Chris Massero on the program give out an 80 to 1 with Nas Reed, and he came 1 or 2 rebounds short. Think about that. We gave out an 80 to 1 ticket and a 40 to 1 hit, and the 80 to 1 barely lost. So I'd be really careful laying, heavy favorite. There's injuries too. So even SGA minus 5,000 to score the most points in the series. I think it's going to happen, obviously, but what do you have to gain? We're laying 5,000, nothing. So these props hit, and definitely game to game. Remember, there was 100 to 1 where Josh Hart would lead that game. I think it was 2 in the second round. It was Knicks Celtics, and it was game 2 in points at 100 to 1, and he did in fact do that. So there are opportunities here where you can hit some big index bets, and look, plus 450, you're not going to get rich off, but it's a lot better than laying 121 to a guy who I don't think is going to grab that many rebounds. So these long shots can hit. These underdogs can hit in these index bets. So I think plus 450, but certainly what our previous guest Ryan was saying, Jalen Williams is certainly worth a look.
My goodness, people, I'm so sorry. The first time we're meeting here, you're finding me in a hotel room in Edmonton, Alberta. I promise that's not always my connection status, but thank you for bearing with me, Doug, and everybody here. I promise we'll get better from here.
Oh, good. I was just vamping on my plus. Now, watch Holmgren grab 12 rebounds per game in the entire series, but I was just saying we saw plus 40 to 1 long shot hit in the last round, the conference finals. Now, favorites usually win. That's why they're the favorites, but this is certainly a viable. It's kind of like a golf future, right? A weekend tournament. These 40 to 1s in golf hit much more than like a Super Bowl champ, like the 40 to 1. Who's a Super Bowl, like the Raiders or someone like that, or the Broncos winning the Super Bowl? I'd rather have I'd rather have a golf future for the weekend, even if I have to take down a guy like Scheffler.
I love that take, except maybe not Scheffler these days with the way he's cooking. I don't know. He seems like Tiger level dominant right now, but we got Rory, so that one hit for me.
Yeah, no, look, Scheffler's been fantastic, and the Rockies, obviously, we've seen all those tweets about like most wins in May, who had more wins, things like that, and the Rockies account pushed back. I think we're going to see some good opportunities here. Like I said, I think an alt line in game 3, if games 1 and 2 go as planned. I don't see a long shot in the MVP market, but I do think in some of the other markets, I think the assist market could get interesting. Halliburton's likely going to lead the way, but I'm okay looking at some of the else in the player assist market, like SGA's plus 350. Jalen Williams 50 to 1. I've made worse bets. Like, I swear I should do a segment called I've made worse bets. I've made worse bets than 50 to 1 for Jalen Williams to have the most assists in a series. But and Hallie gets hurt here and there sometimes. And you mentioned it earlier. He is kind of banged up. So, like I said, I've made worse bets.
I kind of like the idea of McConnell maybe with an over with points, because I feel like he's going to be the one expected to generate a little bit more offense than he has.
So it's interesting. So in the last few rounds, he was a beast with rebounds plus assists. If you can get a combo prop there. But then as the series goes on, I think what happens in closeout games and things like that, coaches really play their starters more, and the combined sort of minutes of the bench goes down. So I'm early in the series. I am interested in a rebounds plus assists for McConnell. I think he's a guy you can count on to bring the noise. I'm always looking at combo for him because, to your point, sometimes he is going to score a lot, but then sometimes he just probes, breaks down a defense, and throws a great pass for an easy bucket or an open 3. So I kind of don't know what I'm getting. I mean, 150 to 1 for most assists. I'd be looking to him. I had this last year in a playoff game when he had the most assists in a game. So rebounds plus assists, ball finds energy. He'll get you some rebounds. He doesn't play a ton of minutes, so you gotta make him count, but he makes them count. So I'd look at over 5.5 rebounds plus assists, even at minus 136 juice. I think McConnell, but to your point, the points could get there too. I've definitely bet his props of rebounds and assists, and then he goes off on points. So maybe it's a PRA thing. Maybe that's the answer here.
I like that. I like that. We'll see what happens in game 1, and then we'll go from there, right?
Yeah, a lot of it is a feeling out process just for the teams and then also for us bettors. We got to see this matchup because this is not a conference matchup that we've seen a bunch. Like, Knicks, Celtics, we kind of know what we're going to get with each
Mhm.
team, all things considered.
Well, it's going to be a blast. I'm so happy to be on the ride with you. And thank you so much for bearing with me and my technical issues. They'll be better next time. Thanks, everybody, for having me. And Doug, thanks for joining us.
Oh, it's great to be here. It's always good to. I know we've joked about the layoff, but we've had some really good guests all week on this show, and we've had some good angles and some good breakdown. It's good to hear sort of the rotation of thought and analysis here.
Yeah, absolutely. And reminder, guys, you can catch Betting Weekly Game Bet Match and Betting Weekly WTA through the end of the French Open for picks and angles from our tennis handicappers. Thanks so much for bearing with me, and thank you for listening.